Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Chapter 7, Section 6, Squares, Squaring, and Parabolas. Um, we've already talked about squaring a little bit when we were talking about exponential functions in Chapter 6, but now we're going to just deal specifically with the square. Um, and so there are a couple things that you need to know about square and squaring and the idea of the parabola, which I'll be using that vocab word a lot. Make sure we get that understood there. So basically what we're talking about here is this is an introduction to squares and how they'll look on graphs. And so we're gonna talk about making a table and graphing a uh, and graphing parabolas here. So what we've got is we've got the function x, y, or f of x equals x squared. We're gonna talk about what that looks like in our graph and our parabola and so forth. What we've got, we're gonna just start off with nice neat numbers here for our table. So we've got -1, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. We start with 0 because that's really easy. 0 times itself is 0. If we go down, 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4. All right, so 2 times itself is 4. If we go back up the other way, if we type this into the calculator, make sure what you're doing is you type this in as this, -1 inside parentheses raised to the second power. That's going to give you a +1. And this is going to give you a +4 when you type it in like this. We've talked about this a little bit last chapter as far as why that's important to write it in that way so that your calculator does not screw it up. So if we see here that the pattern mirrors itself, if we went to 3, we would have 9, and if we had -3, we'd have 9 as well. All right, so our parabola value is going to start at 0, and then the next value is going to be at 1 and 1. Then we've got 2 and 4. And -2 and 4. And then if we went to 3, that'd go up to 9. So up here, and then that's off the screen there. But basically what's going to happen here is this value is going to come down, and this is not a straight line. This is what we call a parabola. It is curved. All right, so this is a parabola. It is a curved line. All parabolas are curved, and we'll talk more about parabolas and so forth in our transformations unit in Chapter 8. But like I said, we're just giving ourselves a heads up as far as what it looks like and so forth here. So just making sure we understand that these are curved, and how we can figure out the values is we create ourselves a table and go from there. If you find like we have the vertex here, the bottom point of our parabola, everything to the right of this and to the left will be the same values. Okay, if you can find that value and then work from there, that's usually the best way to go through it. So now we also have how to solve squares, just like we had how to solve equations with uh, absolute values. So now what we've got here is we've got x squared equals 36, and we need to get rid of this squared aspect of our uh, equation. And what we're going to do is what we call the square root button. Okay, we're going to take the square root. of our function on each side. Okay, and what this does is we're going to take the square root. So how this looks like when you solve problems here is you're going to take the square root on each side. So it's going to look like this. The square root is going to get rid of the square, or get rid of that 2 on the left hand side, and then that's going to give us the square root of 36 on the other side. Basically, what the square root does is it asks the question, what a number times itself gives us 36. So if we think about it, we have an answer of 6. 6 times 6 gives us 36. But just like in the absolute value function, we also have negative 6 times negative 6 gives us 36. So we have this plus or minus aspect again. Alright, so the square root puts a plus or minus on the other side. Alright, so we have the answer of x equals plus or minus 6. So we have two answers that are available. If we take a look at the next example, we have x squared plus 2, and that's equal to 51. So we treat this like a two-step equation. Again, we do the square rooting last. So we're going to minus 2. We minus 2. We get x squared equals 49. We take the square root on each side. That gives us x equals. We automatically put the plus or minus whenever we do the square root. And then that gives us 7. Alright, so x equals plus or minus 7 is our final answer. We have two more examples here. We have x parentheses x plus 2 squared, and that's equal to 25. So now this plus 2 is inside the parentheses with the square on the outside. So now we have to take the square root on each side first, just like we had to do the same thing with the absolute value function in section 5. So now we've got x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 5. Okay, the square root of 25 is 5. So once again, this breaks it down into two problems. We've got x plus 2 is equal to a positive 5. X plus 2 is equal to a negative 5. So now we minus 2, minus 2. We've got x equals 3. We minus 2 and minus 2. X equals negative 7. Those are the two answers that we can come up with there. Alright, last example here, x squared equals negative 81. Anytime that you get a problem where you have an x squared on one side and that's the only thing that's left over is just the x squared, and then on the other side's a negative number, we're always going to have an answer of no solution. And the reason for this is because there is no way that we can get any two numbers to equal a negative number. Alright, so I repeat, anytime that we see something where the x squared is by itself with a negative number on the other side, you don't have to do any calculations, you can just write no solution. You can try typing in the square root of negative 81 on your calculator, and it's going to give you no answer, or it's going to give you an error part. If you ever get an aspect where it says error, just write no solution. Okay, because there's no way that you can take two numbers and multiply them together to get a negative number, if we remember back to our rules for positives times negatives and so forth. Alright, so that is solving squares and parabolas and so forth. If you have any other questions, make sure you let me know. Have a good day.